All right, so today we're going to do the same thing you did with problem set 1, but we're going to do it with problem set 2. If you do finish this early, or if you have any time before the end of the day today on Friday, then you can go ahead and check any of your Google Classroom assignments. And if they are below a 70% in the grade, you can redo them and resubmit them, and I will grade them for you for this grading period. That way it gives you a chance to, bring your grade above the 70 if you're not, or up to the 75 or 80 if you want to get credit recovery. Okay, starting off in problem set 2, number 15. I know it's kind of weird the number started later, but it helped me differentiate between having problem set 1 and problem set 2 just by glancing at them. So, several cases of hemophilia, which is a sex-linked recessive, which means we're going to be talking about X chromosomes and Y chromosomes. It's a sex-linked recessive in women were reported in England. One such woman with hemophilia marries a normal man or a non-hemophilic man. So, show the genotypes and the phenotypes of the parent and of any possible children of such marriage. So if you look at the parental cross, you already know that the woman has hemophilia and the man does not. But remember, the man only has one X, which means that obviously his single X chromosome has to have like a normal presenting allele on it. So we know it's sex-linked and we know it's recessive. So we're going to use a capital H to represent normal. And then we'll use a lowercase h to represent hemophilia. Okay. So the woman has hemophilia, so she has to be X capital lowercase h, X lowercase h. And the man has normal blood, so he has X capital H and then a Y because he's a man. He doesn't have X's, right? So we're going to do this cross and draw it out in the Punnett square. And after you draw it out, you'll see that when or if they have a female child, there is a 100% chance that the female child will have a normal blood type, but she will be a carrier for hemophilia, because she will have that little lowercase h, but it doesn't affect her because she also has that capital H. When they have male children or boys, there's a 100% chance that that boy will be a hemophiliac or have a blood disorder. That's because when the father gives the Y gamete, the mother is the only one providing the X, and the only X gametes that she is providing, the alleles are all lowercase h. Okay, so all of the male offspring will have hemophilia from this cross or from this marriage. Okay, so that's something you can think about too when you're like getting married and having kids. You want to think about any possible genetic disorders in family history. So number 16, suppose a young woman comes to you for advice in your capacity as a marriage counselor. She tells you that her brother has muscular dystrophy, which is a sex-linked recessive. Okay, keep that in mind. But both of her parents are normal. Okay. The young woman wishes to marry a man with no history of muscular dystrophy in his family. And she wants to know the possibility of her children having this disease. What would you tell her, and how would you explain your conclusions? Well, for number 16, we know again that it's sex-linked recessive because they told us, which is super nice. The parents are normal, but the brother has it. So that means the mom of this lady probably is a carrier, okay? The lady that is at hand is normal, we're assuming, based on what she's explaining, because she didn't say that she has it. So she wants to marry a man with no family history of muscular dystrophy. So the man probably has the normal dominant characteristic. So we use a capital D for normal and a lowercase d for muscular dystrophy. Okay. So this is what her intended husband's genotype is probably, or actually is, because he's normal. Sorry, it's not probably, it is. The parents we're going to talk about, because her parents are both normal presenting, so neither of them have muscular dystrophy, but we know that the brother has, so that means that somebody is a carrier, and we know that males cannot be carriers because they only have one X. So dad has to be normal, and the only X he has to have normal allele. So it's going to be X capital D and Y, because he has a Y because he's a male. But the mom has to be the carrier then, because if the dad gave the Y, that means the X has to come from the mom that gave the brother muscular dystrophy, which means that one of hers is a lowercase d. Okay, it just so happens that the brother got the Y from the dad and the lowercase d allele from the mom. Okay, again, this is explained in the line below. So if you explain it in your own words, that's totally fine. And you want to show the cross of the parents that were from the you want to show the cross of the, wow, again, it's not showing. Let me close it and reopen it. So you want to show the cross of the parents that produced the lady and her brother, and then you're also going to potentially show what would happen if this lady married this man that she intends to marry. Okay, so this is the parental cross. This is her dad over here on the left side, and this is her mom up here on the top. And so the lady had the 50% chance of being a homozygous dominant, which is normal presenting, no muscular dystrophy, but she also has a 50% chance of being a carrier. So she looks normal, doesn't have muscular dystrophy, but it's potential that she could pass it down. And that's where she wants to be careful of. And we were looking at the brother had the 50% chance of having muscular dystrophy or not having muscular dystrophy, and he just happened to lose the genetic lottery, and he has the muscular dystrophy allele from the mom. Okay, so this is the answer that you would be giving her as her marriage counselor after you got through the genetics part of it. So you'd be saying, if the lady happens to have the X capital D genotype, which there's a 50% chance she could be, and her fiance is X capital DY because he presents normal, then after you do your Punnett square, the daughters would all be X capital D, so they would all be normal and not carriers. And the sons would also all be normal. And again, sons can't be carriers to begin with. However, if the lady was that 50% chance of getting X capital D and X lowercase d, and the fiance is still X capital DY, then the daughters would have a 50% chance of being homozygous dominant and 50% chance of being carriers. Okay, here is where the hard-hitting part would be. Her sons would be a 50% chance of being normal, and they would also have a 50% chance of having muscular dystrophy because the cross would end up being similar to her parents' cross originally that produced her and her brother. Okay, so that would be your answer that you would be telling her because she's not sure exactly what she is, and there's no guarantee to what she is. So it's quite a long, big answer. Number 17, a man sues his wife for divorce on the grounds of infidelity or cheating. Both the man and the woman have normal eyes, but there's a daughter who has coloboma iridis. We'll call it coloboma iridis, a fissure in the iris of the eye. So there's a part in the iris that like dips down, and you can see the dark part of it because you can see it if you actually zoom into eyes where the muscle tissue is like strands and stuff. This is inherited as a sex-linked recessive trait. Again, they told us, which is really, really nice. If you were the man's lawyer, could you use this as evidence of infidelity? If so, how do you explain your case to a jury? So let's look at the facts that we were able to pull. Okay, so we know that it's sex-linked recessive for coloboma iridis. Both parents have normal eyes, right? That means that the mom either has to have X capital I, or she could be a carrier and be X capital I and X lowercase I, right? We're not really sure. Okay, we know that the daughter has it though, which means the mom must at least be X capital I, X lowercase I, because she had to give one allele to a daughter who has two X's, right? So she had to be able to give the X lowercase I. So that's what we're able to figure out what the mom's genotype is, because the daughter literally came out the mom. So we know that the daughter came from the mom. It's not like that's a problem, right? We're just trying to figure out if the dad is the one that she's in a relationship with it, or if she cheated with somebody. We know that the dad is normal presenting too. So he doesn't have this recessive trait, which means that he is X capital IY, guaranteed. Okay, and we always want to write down the key just for our own sakes and for clarification if we're going to reference this in our answers, as I, capital I is normal and lowercase I is coloboma iridis. Okay, you do the cross and you're like, wait, if you did this cross and the woman was X capital I, then all the daughters would be unaffected. So we know that this is not her genotype. This is just to explain before, when we already made the assumption that it had to be this one, because we know that the daughter has it. Okay, so this one is out of the picture. The woman has to be X capital I, X lowercase I. So this is the bottom part, right? So X capital I, X lowercase I is a crossed with the man who is X capital I, Y. All daughters would still be unaffected in this case, right? 50% of them would be carriers and 50% of them would be homozygous dominant for it, which would mean that none of the daughters would be able to have the condition, because no matter if the mom gives the dominant or the recessive, the dad's always giving a dominant, which would cover any issues. Okay, we know that 50% of the sons would be affected and 50% of the sons wouldn't be affected, but we're not talking about sons right now. We're talking about the daughter, right? So the woman had to cheat with a man who has coloboma iridis, right? Because he had to also be able to give an X lowercase I to the daughter while the woman gave the daughter an X lowercase I. So you can actually use these kind of DNA typing and gene typing to figure out if people are cheating. And the most common way to do that is blood type. But this is another cool way. It is a rare condition though. Okay, so if you were the lawyer, you'd be like, ooh, this is bad. And then you have to reveal the genetic test I showed. Number 18, congenital general hypertrichosis or werewolf syndrome is an extremely rare condition characterized by excessive body hair. The area around the eyes, hands, and feet are the only parts of the body not covered by hair. So the condition is inherited in a sex-linked dominant fashion. This is kind of weird to wrap your head around, but we'll work around it and talk about it. A circus's wolf boy is madly in love with a normal female acrobat. What are the chances that any son of theirs would have a future as a wolf boy? So first of all, kind of weird because it's dominant, right? Sex-linked dominant. This is vastly different from anything we've done so far on this problem set. We're going to use capital H as hypertrichosis, and we're going to use lowercase h as normal. Okay. The rules still apply to the capital and lowercase, but remember that the condition is actually present with the dominant or the capital. Okay. So the wolf boy has to have hypertrichosis, right? Because he has hair all over his body. So he would be X capital HY. The normal female acrobat, she has to be homozygous recessive for this in order to be normal presenting, right? Because if she had even one capital H, she would also have werewolf syndrome. Okay, so you're going to cross them and see what is the potential for their offspring. And if you do the Punnett square, you would see that 100% of the time, if they have a daughter, that daughter will have werewolf syndrome or hypertrichosis. Okay, because all of the daughter's possible genotypes always result in X capital H and X lowercase h. On the other hand, if you look at the sons, because the woman can only give X lowercase h when the dad is giving the Y, then 100% of the sons would actually be normal because they would be 100% X lowercase h and Y. So there's actually a 0% chance of the son ever being a wolf boy. So they can't really inherit the family trait from the father, if you know what I mean. For number 19, in cats, the alleles for yellow and black fur are codominant and sex-linked. The heterozygote has a combination of yellow and black fur known as tortoiseshell. Show the offspring expected from a cross between a tortoiseshell female and a yellow male. This is kind of cool to talk about just because the reason why cats, only female cats can have 3 colors is because 2 of the color genes are on the X. And there's a possibility of having like an absence of color, which would be white fur, and only females can show that because males only get 1 copy. So they either get 1 color or 1 color and the absence of a color on that same allele. So we know that the genes for color are sex-linked. So we're going to be using X and Y. We also know that they're codominant because both colors show up, right? They show up in patches. The heterozygote shows patches of both colors. So we're going to use XY as yellow fur, XB as black fur, and obviously males would be Y as their other chromosome, right? And the note is that males can only be a singular color in this case that they're explaining. So we have a tortoiseshell female, which means that she has both colors presenting in codominance. So that'd be XY, XB, and a yellow male, which would be XY, and then a capital Y. So don't mix this up just because the Y over here represents yellow and it's a superscript on the X chromosome. The capital Y over here as a base chromosome is just for the chromosome. Nothing is attached to it though, because it's separate chromosome. So we're going to do that cross for the Punnett square. And you'll see that when there are female offspring, there's a 50% chance of the offspring being yellow. And there's a 50% chance that that female offspring is tortoiseshell. If there are male offspring, though, if they have little male kittens, there's a 50% chance that the male kitten will have yellow fur or that they have black fur. Number 20, again, hypertrichosis again this time, except this one is related to ears, right? Pinnae auris. Auris is usually related to ears. It's called hairy ears syndrome, and it's been hypothesized to be Y-linked. Interesting, right? Because we've only been talking about sex-linked stuff so far, and that's usually, when we say sex-linked, we usually mean X chromosome linked. But when it's actually on the Y chromosome, it's special, so we'll actually refer to it as Y-linked because those are pretty special cases. If the gene for the trait is indeed on the Y chromosome, does it matter if the allele is dominant or recessive? Do daughters of hairy-eared fathers need to worry about their sons if their sons could have hairy ears? So we're going to kind of investigate this case because, again, it's kind of weird to think about. It's almost like talking about sex-linked dominant cases of genetic diseases, right? So we know that it's Y-linked for this hypertrichosis pinnae, right? Think, Would any individual ever receive 2 copies? Does any individual ever receive 2 Ys? Most of the time, no, right? There is an aneuploidy that we talked about where it's XYY, right? The Superman aneuploidy. But that's super, super rare. So it's probably not important if this condition or if this allele is a dominant one, because nobody really is ever receiving 2 of them, right? They're only receiving 1. So if they receive that 1, that's whatever it is, they're showing it. Okay. Now think for the second part. Daughters don't carry a Y from their father, so they don't inherit it anyways. So if their father had hypertrichosis pinnate and they had hairy ears, it doesn't affect the daughter's genotype, and the daughter can't pass it down. So the daughter would only ever have to worry about who they marry, right? If the person they marry carries the gene on their Y, then their son could get it, or their son will get it. But if they're worried about getting it from their father, no, because the Y never came to the daughter in the first place, so the daughter couldn't give it to her son. Okay. Number 21. In dogs, the tendency to bark while trailing game is a result of a dominant allele, while silent trailing is the recessive trait. So trailing means like trailing prey, right? Erect ears are due to a dominant allele, and drooping ears is the recessive trait. Show the expected phenotypic ratio in the offspring of 2 erect-eared barkers that are heterozygous for both traits. Okay, this is going to be a 16-box dihybrid punnett square cross, right? So it's going to be our big box 4x4, and you're going to have to use foil. So we know that we're going to use capital B as barking and lowercase b as silent for trailing. And for the other gene, we're going to be using erect ears as capital E because it's dominant, and lowercase e for drooping ears. Okay, so we have 2 erect-eared barkers, and they're both heterozygous, which means that they're going to be capital E, lowercase e, capital B, lowercase b, and they're crossed with the exact same thing. So you have to do the possible gametes, right? Foil, front, which would be capital E, capital B, outside, which would be capital E, lowercase b, inside, which would be the lowercase e and the capital B, and the last, which would be the last E, which is the lowercase e and the lowercase b. So these are the possible gametes that each one of these can produce. Now, remember, we're doing a cross with the same thing, which means that the top has to have these 4 and the side has to have these 4. And you would write out your full punnett square. Even though it's a pain in the butt to do it, you have to do it until you can do it super, super easily and almost by heart. Okay, so our phenotypic ratios that come out of this would be 9 erect-eared barkers, right? Anything that has a capital E and a capital B. Even just one of both, okay? We have 3 erect-eared silent, which means that there's a capital E, but there's 2 lowercase b's. We have 3 droopy-eared barkers, which means that we have lowercase e's, but at least one of the b's is capital. And then we only have 1 that's a droopy-eared silent trailer, which would mean that we would have lowercase e's and lowercase b's. Okay, so that would be our phenotypic ratio that comes out of this cross. If you need to pull all the genotypes to the side first, and then find those numbers, and then find the phenotypic ratio based off of that, that is totally fine. That is your work to show, and if it makes you understand it better, then it's going to get you more credit in the future when you're answering questions. In 22, chestnut color in horses is due to a recessive allele, while the dominant alleles cause the coat to be black colored. Pacing gait, or when the way that the horse runs at a kind of mid-speed, is due to a recessive allele, whereas the dominant allele results in a trotting gait. Show the offspring that would result from a cross between a black trotter, heterozygous for both genes, and a chestnut pacer. So when you look at the explanations for how to represent each of the alleles, capital B is going to be black coat, and lowercase b is going to be chestnut coat. And you always need to write these out, because whether or not you know it by heart, if you work on these 4x4s with 16 boxes, you are going to get yourself confused if you don't make a key for yourself, okay? Even people who are used to doing these still write out the key in case they need to reference it to be like, wait, actually, what does this mean again? Just to reiterate. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Capital T is trotting gait, and lowercase t is pacing gait. So we have a black trotter, which is heterozygous for both, which is represented by capital B, lowercase b, capital T, lowercase t. It is crossed with a chestnut pacer. So chestnut means it has to be homozygous recessive for the B, lowercase b, and it's a pacer, so it has to be lowercase t, lowercase t. The possible gametes for a homozygous recessive for both traits is super, super easy, because it can only give lowercase b, lowercase t, no matter if you take the front, the outside, the inside, or the last. It's all lowercase b, lowercase t. However, our heterozygous one for both traits is going to again be, you're going to do foil. And when you do a cross, you actually only need 1 times 4, which is super, super nice because, again, this only gives 1 gamete. So you can write 4 rows of it if you really want to, but it's still going to be the same thing every single time. So why do it multiple times? Right, so that 1 gamete is over here from this parent, and these 4 gametes come from this parent. And you're going to get a ratio of 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 of all the combinations of black trotter, black pacer, to chestnut trotter, to chestnut pacer. And that would be your phenotypic ratio. 23. The dominant allele, capital B, causes blaze, which is a white forelock of hair in the human. So this front chunk of hair right here just is white, and it's always white no matter what you do to it. It grows in white, and it's just the front chunk. It looks kind of cool. My cousin actually has it. The recessive allele for albinism, which is lowercase a, it's recessive, prevents the formation of melanin, or the coloring pigment, in any part of the body, so the hair is white all over. So you can't see blaze if you have albinism, which is kind of interesting because then one of the genes could be hiding the other gene's phenotype. A man with a blaze had an albino mother. He marries an albino woman who has no blaze in either parent. Show the expected genotypic and phenotypic ratios of any children they may have. Again, note, because capital B for blaze is a rare allele, there's almost no chance that the man will have 2 of them. So we're going to assume automatically that he only has 1 blaze allele. Makes it a little easier for us. So again, capital B is blaze, and lowercase b is normal hair pigment. Capital A is going to be normal pigmented skin, and lowercase a is going to be representing albinism. I wrote skin here, but normal pigmentation actually is the more correct term, just because pigmentation applies to the whole body. It's not just skin. That's my bad. Okay, so a man with blaze and an albino mom means that he has that 1 capital B, remember, but he's not going to have 2 because it's rare. And he presents normal pigmentation in everywhere except for his blaze, but he had to have gotten a lowercase a because his mom only had lowercase a's to give because she had 2 lowercase a's, right? So he presents normal, but he's technically a carrier for albinism. So the gametes, again, if you do foil, front, outside, inside, last, are these 4. Now you have an albino woman with no blaze parents. Remember, blaze is actually recessive, right? So albino would be the lowercase a, because she actually has both recessives, and blaze not having it is going to be shown by lowercase b and lowercase b. So the gametes again are super easy because if you do foil, all of the results still end up as lowercase b, lowercase a. So when you're doing this cross, again, it's a 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 ratio for their possible children, right? There's a 25% chance that they will have blaze but have normal pigmentation overall. There's a 25% chance that they have blaze and they're albino. So you wouldn't really see the blaze, but you would know their genotype for it. There's a 25% chance that they don't have blaze and they have normal pigmentation. And there's also a 25% chance that they have no blaze, but they present as albino. So the issue is that right here, technically you could argue that it's a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio, because if you have blaze and you're albino versus if you have no blaze and you have albinism, you can actually tell because the albinism actually kind of overrides all of it. So if you wanted to argue it's a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio, you totally could. And number 24. Mr. and Mrs. Smith believe that the baby presented to them by the hospital is not theirs. Blood type is analyzed for the parents and the child. So this is usually how cheating is figured out. Results are mother is type A, father is type B, and child is type O. Is it possible that the child belongs to these parents, or do they definitely have the wrong baby? So the reason why the phrasing is possibility and definitely is because you have to be able to look at all of the potentials. Remember, because blood type is a multiple allele gene. So we know that the mother is type A. We don't know what kind of type A she is though, because she could have both IAs, or she could have the IA and then the recessive lowercase I. We don't know. The father is type B. So does he have both type Bs, or sorry, does he have both B alleles, or does he have a B allele and then the recessive lowercase I? We don't know. The child is type O. Is that possible? Type O is lowercase I, right? So we would do the Punnett square using the one that has the highest potential of producing lowercase I, which means that both parents have to be able to give the lowercase I, right? Even though their blood type is still A and B. So if you cross these two, you actually get a 25% chance of any of their offspring, each time they're born, to be a blood type O, which would be the lowercase I. So honestly, yeah, it's possible. Because if the mother is IA, lowercase I, and the father is IB lowercase I, then there is a 25% chance each time a child is born that it would have a blood type O. Okay, and this Punnett square is your reference. But if you knew for a fact that the parents, either one of them was actually dominant for both, then you would be able to suspect cheating. Number 25, a man has A-type blood and his wife has B-type blood. When she bears a child who has type O blood, the man accuses her of infidelity, again cheating, because he believes that he could not be the father of such a child. On the basis of this information alone, is there any justification for the man's suspicions? Well, it seems to be a very similar case to our last one. So if the man is type A and the wife is type B, the child is type O, it is possible again, if his type A is an IA lowercase I genotype and her type is an IB lowercase I genotype. Otherwise, there's cheating, right? If you look at if you were going to write a Punnett square and this was an FRQ and it was a standalone, you would have to rewrite this entire Punnett square and the results from it, again, just for reference for this one problem. Okay, but in this case, if you wanted to just say reference the one from 24, that is also fine. Number 26, last one. A woman sues a man who she believes to be the father of her child, right? He's denying, he's like, nah, but the woman has type AB blood, the man has type O, and the child also has type AB blood, like the child's mother. Is it likely that this man fathered this woman's child? Let's see. So if we do a cross, we know that type AB blood means that it's IAIB, and the type O is lowercase I. And we know that the child already got their blood type done, and they are IAIB. So let's do this cross between the parents. IAIB, lowercase I, crossed out, and any child of this couple born has a 50% chance of having blood type A, which would be an IA, lowercase I here, or a 50% chance of having blood type B, which is IB, lowercase I. A child with blood type AB is not possible out of this cross. So this woman accusing this man of being the father of her child, she's wrong, right? He is not the father, right? So again, throughout this video, check your answers, make sure you're using a different color to mark, whether it's on the PDF or whether it's by hand, and then submit your corrections so that I can see your corrections and that you've gone through this video. And you're going to get bonus points, up to 24 bonus points, or sorry, extra credit points added to your grade based on your completion of this. Again, if you didn't get anything wrong for some of the questions, you don't have to mark them. But if you're missing any of the information that I mentioned, it's probably in your best interest to add on the information in your different color. Again, when you finish this and you have any work that's missing, definitely go work on that and turn it in before the end of the day on today, Friday. Or if you have any grades that are below a 70, you may redo any of them as long as they are a Google Classroom assignment.